You're standing in line at checkout. You didn't come here for this. You came for one thing, milk, maybe, or a phone charger, something small, something necessary. But somewhere between the door and the register, a few extra things ended up in your cart. And you noticed. You did notice. There was a moment, quiet, almost invisible, where something in you said, not really, where something registered that this wasn't the plan, but you kept walking. And it wasn't laziness. It wasn't carelessness. You are not a reckless person. You know your numbers. You've looked at your bank statement. You've had the conversation with yourself more than once about cutting back. And yet, here you are. Again. Not because you're weak, because something else is happening. Something most people never actually name. Most people treat this like a willpower problem. Like if you just tried harder, tracked every dollar, downloaded the right app, set one more reminder, you'd finally get it under control. And that belief feels logical. It does. It's the kind of thing that sounds right in a podcast intro. But here's what doesn't add up. The people who struggle most with spending aren't the least informed. They're often some of the most informed. They know the budgets, they've read the articles, they understand on paper exactly where the money goes, and they still can't stop. So the problem isn't information. It isn't discipline. Not really. The problem is something quieter than that. Something that lives underneath the numbers, in the part of your brain that was built long before bank accounts existed. There's one idea, one simple shift in how you understand this that changes everything. And we're going to walk through it tonight, slowly, no pressure. I'm Eli. This channel is called Financial Instinct, and the reason it exists is simple. Most financial advice skips the part that actually matters, the part before the math, the part that decides whether the math even works. If this way of looking at things, the why behind the numbers, is something that resonates with you, you might want to stick around. Hit like, subscribe, and let the algorithm do the rest. No pressure. I'll still be here either way. All right, let's get into it. Here's what happens inside your brain when money feels tight. It doesn't matter if it's actually tight. What matters is whether it feels tight. And for a lot of people, more than we admit, it feels tight almost all the time. Even when the account isn't empty, even when technically things are fine. That feeling, that low, constant hum of financial uncertainty does something to your nervous system. It activates a part of your brain that was designed for survival, the same system that kicks in when you're physically threatened. And here's the thing about that system. It doesn't think long term. It can't. It was never built to. It was built to get you through right now, to reduce discomfort, to find relief quickly. So when you're in that state, even mildly, even quietly, your brain starts steering you toward anything that feels like relief in the moment. A small purchase, a treat, something that says you're okay without using words. It's not a character flaw. It's a nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do. The cruel irony is this: the spending that's supposed to feel good, the relief, is often the thing that keeps the stress alive. It's a loop, a slow, invisible one, and smart people get caught in it every day. Breathing room and survival mode aren't just mindsets. They're two completely different operating systems, and most people are running survival mode on a life that doesn't actually require it. Think about gravity. You can stand on a cliff and feel completely fine. Solid ground, clear sky, nothing wrong. But there's an edge, and the moment you cross it, even an inch, the entire equation changes. Suddenly, the ground isn't holding you anymore, and no amount of wanting to go back makes that physics disappear. Financial life has a version of this edge. It's not a number on your bank statement. It's not a specific dollar amount. It's a feeling, a threshold inside your head where "I can afford this" stops being a real calculation and starts being an assumption. And most people cross it without realizing. It happens gradually, a subscription here, a habit there. Each one by itself feels completely reasonable, completely fine. You never look at any one of them and say, that's the problem. But collectively, they push you past the line, a quiet line, one where your spending is no longer based on what you actually have. It's based on what you expect to have, what you assume will be there. And once you're past that line, Every new expense doesn't feel like adding weight. It feels like normal, like the way things are, like the baseline. That's the trap, not the spending itself. The fact that the spending starts to feel like the ground you're standing on, solid, stable, just how life works. Until it isn't. Let's put some numbers to this. And I want to be clear, these are conservative, quiet numbers, not designed to scare you. Let's say you have a handful of small, recurring expenses that you don't really think about anymore. A streaming service you barely use, a subscription box you forgot you signed up for, a habit, coffee, lunch out, something small that happens 3 or 4 times a week. Let's say conservatively, those add up to about $60 a month. 60. That's not a lot. That's barely $2 a day. But 60 a month is $720 a year. And over 5 years, with no changes, no adjustments, that's $3,600. Quietly, silently, without you ever having a dramatic moment about it. Now stack that, because most people don't have just one $60 habit. They have 2 or 3 or more. Things that individually feel small, but together start to reshape the shape of your financial life, slowly, the way a river reshapes a canyon. This isn't to make you feel guilty. It's meant to make the invisible visible. That's it. Once you see the shape of it, everything else gets easier, not harder. Easier. Here's where it actually matters. This isn't about money. I'll say that again because it's the part that changes everything. This is not about money. It's about positioning. Think about the difference between someone who negotiates from a place of strength, who has options, who can walk away, who isn't desperate for any single outcome, and someone who negotiates from a place of need. Same conversation, same room, completely different result. Financial life works the same way. When your spending is running on autopilot, when every dollar is already spoken for before it arrives, you don't have leverage, you have obligation. You don't have choices, you have commitments you made when you weren't paying attention. And obligation isn't the same as ownership. It feels like stability sometimes, but it's not. It's just a quieter version of being stuck. The people who seem to have it figured out, who aren't anxious about money, who don't feel that low-grade pressure, it's not because they earn more. Not always. It's because they've moved from obligation into positioning. They have room. Not a lot maybe, just enough. And that room, that small, deliberately kept space between what comes in and what goes out, that's not a luxury. That's the difference between desperation and leverage, between approval seeking and actual affordability, between renting your life and owning it. That's the shift, not how much you make, how much room you leave. None of this happened by accident. The systems around you, the ones you interact with every single day, were designed deliberately and carefully to make spending feel effortless and saving feel like deprivation. Banks make money when you spend, not when you sit still. The entire structure of consumer credit is built on the assumption that you will borrow, that you will pay interest, and that the system will quietly profit from the gap between what you have and what you want. Marketing exists for one reason: to make you feel like something is missing. To take a neutral moment, a Tuesday afternoon, a quiet drive home, and turn it into a moment of wanting. Not because you needed anything, because someone spent millions of dollars making sure you'd feel like you did. Loan structures are engineered to feel manageable. Monthly payments are designed to be small enough that you say yes without doing the longer math, the math that shows you what that yes actually costs over time. And then there's the cultural layer, the idea that spending is normal, that keeping up with what everyone else seems to be doing is just what adults do, that if you're not spending a certain way, something must be wrong with you. None of that is neutral. All of it was built, and it was built to benefit everyone in the system except the person holding the wallet. So if you've been carrying some quiet shame about this, about not being able to stop, about feeling out of control, let that go. You were up against a system, not a personal failing. Here's the mistake most people make once they start to see this clearly. They go cold turkey. They make a dramatic shift, cut everything, a budget so tight it barely breathes, no room for anything that's strictly necessary, all discipline, no flexibility. And it feels good. For about 2 weeks, maybe 3. It feels like control, like finally being serious, like you've cracked the code. And then it doesn't hold.
Because deprivation isn't a strategy, it's a pressure cooker. The tighter you squeeze, the more your nervous system resists. The same survival instincts we talked about earlier, the ones that push you toward relief, they don't disappear because you made a spreadsheet. They get louder. So the cold turkey approach doesn't fix the loop, it just restarts it from a different place. You go from spending without thinking to not spending with enormous effort. And enormous effort sustained over time is exhausting. It runs out. The long-term cost of getting this wrong isn't just financial, it's psychological. It teaches your brain that money management is punishment, and punishment eventually gets avoided. This isn't about discipline, it's about design. Designing the small things so the big things take care of themselves, quietly, without a fight. So here's what I want you to hear, and I want you to actually let it land. You don't have to figure this out tonight.
You don't have to overhaul your life this week. You don't have to impress anyone. You don't have to have the perfect system by Friday. You don't have to be further along than you are right now. You're allowed to wait. You're allowed to choose the boring option, the slow one, the unglamorous one, the one that doesn't make a good story at dinner, but quietly, over time, actually works. You're allowed to say, not yet. Not to the idea, to the pressure, to the feeling that you should already be somewhere else. Because the people who are genuinely okay with money, they didn't get there by rushing. They got there by giving themselves permission to move at a pace that didn't break them. Stability isn't boring. It's the quietest form of confidence there is. And you're closer to it than you think. This channel is for people who'd rather understand the game than win it loud. If that's the kind of thinking you come back for, the slow version, the one that actually sticks, then like and subscribe. Not because you have to, because this is your kind of place, and you'll know it when it is. Here's what's true right now, in this moment, as you finish watching this. You are not behind. You're not behind because you spent too much this month. You're not behind because you didn't start saving at 22. You're not behind because the system was designed to make sure you'd feel exactly this way. You see it now. The loop, the threshold, the way the quiet costs add up, the way the system is built to keep you spending without thinking. And seeing it, clearly, calmly, without panic, that's not a small thing. That's actually the hardest part. Everything after this is just adjusting. You don't have a willpower problem, you have a clarity problem. And clarity, once you have it, doesn't go away. So take a breath. You're not behind. You just see the game more clearly now.